Everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel and a mixed media tutorial. Today I'm creating on 10 by 10 MDF. Here is the piece that I created, and I use a stencil and a napkin. Both can be purchased from NINNYSNAPKINS. Check out the description box below for a discount code. So this is lilac leather napkin. And I absolutely loved the colors and the vividness of the colors in this napkin. So I am simply, after taking off the extra plies, I am water cutting it with a liner brush. And I'm getting as much of that extra excess napkin off as I like. When I use the matte medium, most of it does turn and disappears, but it's no more difficult to cut it close and avoid any possible cloudy areas later on. But I must say that then all the napkins that I've gotten from Ninny's Napkin and done do go very translucent when I apply them. So I'm going to put some of the lilacs on the bottom and the top, and I'm positioning them in place, and I have this chicken wire reverse stencil. It's a 12 by 12 one. And I thought, I want some background interest on here. So I'm just placing it, and I don't want it underneath where the napkin's going to go, because I don't want to get those dark lines peeking through the napkin, because again, the napkin's going to go rather translucent. So if there's lots of darkness or lines or script underneath it, you're going to see that. So when you are doing stenciling, you got to keep that in mind. There are ways of dealing with that with gesso and painting it out. So I'm loving the effect of, the chicken wire in there. It's kind of like there's a gate or something. Now I want a base coat of color. So I have alizarin crimson and deep violet and my white gesso, and I'm just mixing them. I want a very soft, almost a wash. I don't want a solid color. The napkins I want to really pop off the background, but I do want to introduce the colors that are in the napkin to the background. And so I tested out a couple colors before I found a close enough match. You can also mix colors to match the colors of the napkin, and that's how you can learn about what colors go well together. So you're not really starting from scratch. Now, because I've added gesso in here, it was fairly opaque. So most of the chicken wire stenciling has been pushed way back. Very little of it kind of peeks through in the final. So here I am taking some saran wrap, and I bunched it up, and I am basically stamping and mark making with it, with the deep violet, with the alizarin crimson, and I'm just kind of going over the entire board. Now this MDF board, I did gesso it, and I painted the sides black. And my husband had cut a keyhole hanger in the back. So it's ready to go. It doesn't need any wiring or anything after this. So I just play with the colors, and I really like this mottled effect. I've introduced, basically it looks like, if you were looking into the bush. Now I'm using some gesso. It's just regular store brand gesso, but it has thickened. And I'm using a makeup sponge, and I'm going through. Now, what that does, it has more texture. Not as much as texture paste or modeling paste, but more than just gesso. Now, this is the stencil from the Crafter's Workshop called Lilacs. And I've paired these two, this napkin and this, works so well together. And I'm loving how the white is just making that background even softer. So I'm putting in some of it. Remember, I'm going to put the lilacs, the stencil or the napkin part in the other two corners. So I'm just playing with composition here. So I'm using my liquid matte medium from Liquitex. This is Basics version. There's a professional one. I find them fairly interchangeable for my purposes. And I put it underneath and then I put it on top. Some of that got cut out. I didn't turn on the record button or something happened. Now the fun part with the napkins is you can piece. You can cut out parts of it and mix and match and change the composition to fit the size of the substrate or page that you are working on. You can add a leaf here and there if you've got an empty space by just cutting it out. So I'm loving that because the background is all modeled and it has the same colors. I love the texture from the thick gesso that I used. Now, if you don't have gesso that has gone thick or you don't want to buy thick gesso, what you can do is mix modeling paste with gesso and get that kind of in between. And that works really well too. So now I'm just taking the stencil and adding more. And some of this I'm going to stencil over top of the napkins. And this really gives perspective and it layers it up. Some of it is also more opaque and some of it is less. Some of it's more textured, some of it is less. And that all adds up to some wonderful interest on this piece. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm so very happy with this piece. Lilacs for me, there was a hedge of lilacs growing in the house that I grew up in. There was a hedge of lilacs at my grandpa's farm. If you like my art, you like how I teach, please follow me on Instagram. Go to @CreativeKatie on Instagram. So then I decided, while those lilacs are beautiful, I am going to add to them. And I'm dipping my liner brush in the white gesso and the alizarin crimson and deep violet and just very painterly, very easily painting the shapes of the lilac petals. I'm not being overly precise. I go back, I come back in, I might put some white. And this again builds up the texture. And at the end, you don't know that this is a napkin at all. I wait a little bit and I dry it, so I move around onto the various ones. And you can tell the difference of the one on the lower hand and the one above it, where I've not done any added paint. It's a bit of a long process, but I'm not being very precise at all. I've left a lot of this in and I've slowed some of it down just so you can see the idea. And I'm just very casually putting it in. Now the color from the napkin is behind it. The shapes are all there and I'm just kind of going with the flow. So there I have some white ones and I do come back in and I add color on top of them. Sometimes I do it when it's wet, sometimes I do it when it's dry, sometimes I get the purple paint with the white gesso. I find the addition of the gesso is the real key here. And when this is hanging on the wall and when it's all done, I'm so thrilled with it. So I hope you give this a try. It's something that I've been working on. You'll see there's lots of videos and I'll put links to them in either the top right hand corner in the iCards or at the end one. So I have a sentiment here, and what I'm going to do is print it off on tissue paper. So I cut a piece of tissue paper. This is just dollar store tissue paper. I cut it in there and I taped it down and I feed it through my printer with the tissue side up. Now sometimes it wrinkles and you have to do it again. But more times than not, when I've taped it inside, it has worked quite well. And then I just cut it up. Now the reason I'm doing it on the tissue paper is because I don't want the excess white. I just want the lettering to show. And I played with a couple different sentiments here. I do have sentiment packs for sale. You can contact me, creativekatie@gmail.com, if you're interested in purchasing some sentiment packs. This one I am working on through the Garden Gate sentiment pack, but it is not yet available, but I'll let you know. Now I'm gluing this down with the matte medium. The key here is use lots of matte medium. Let it really soak into the paper and it really goes translucent. You can't even tell. It also helps because this is a lighter background. If it was a darker background, sometimes it will show a little bit, but then you can do a bit of a wash with color and get rid of that. Now there I had a crease in it, so I ended up having to print it off and reapply it. And there we go. So I just kind of flip it up halfway, put the matte medium down, flip it down, press it down, and then do the other side. So I'm going to get an edge here with a makeup sponge, and I believe I'm using the purple, and then I come back and I do black. And I often do two, I do the color as well as the black. I just like that effect, but you can just go straight to black. Remember, the edges are black, but I want a little bit of that black showing in the front to read with the sentiment. I hope you love this one as much as I do. Leave me a comment. If you give this technique a try, come back and tell me about it. Come to my Facebook group, Mixed Media Creations, and share what you've done. Thanks for watching.